Chicago's most ruthless underworld boss had built an empire on blood and silence. His name was Raphael Moretti. She was a struggling catering assistant who could never fit into a sample size. Yet when Raphael Moretti fired 10 flawless supermodels just to hire Lily Harper, the entire criminal underworld of Chicago held its breath. The penthouse boardroom of the Moretti Syndicate, high above the gray, churning waters of Lake Michigan, felt like a freezer. Raphael Moretti preferred it that way. The frigid air kept his men sharp and his enemies uneasy. He was the undisputed king of Chicago's modern mafia. Behind the polished front of legitimate real estate and hospitality empires lay a web of extortion, hidden ports, and bodies that would never be found. He wore a bespoke Brioni suit that fit his broad shoulders like a second skin. His dark eyes held no warmth as he studied the 10 women lined up before him. They were the finest the Ford Models agency could offer, flown in from Paris, Milan, and New York. Tall, impossibly thin, and perfectly contoured, they had come to audition as the face of La Familia, Raphael's newest and most luxurious restaurant in the West Loop. The place was meant to honor his late mother, a spotlessly clean front that even the FBI could never touch. The advertising campaign was worth millions, yet Raphael felt only a hollow boredom that teetered on the edge of violence. "Turn," he commanded. His voice was a low, gravelly baritone that left no space for argument. The 10 models pivoted together, stilettos striking the imported Italian marble in perfect unison. They offered empty, hungry smiles and fluttered lashes worth more than most people's rent. His underboss, Tony Russo, stood near the mahogany door, shifting his weight. Tony recognized that look in Raphael's eyes. It was the same cold, calculating stare that had preceded the order to burn an entire warehouse to the ground. "They look like mannequins, Tony," Raphael murmured, pressing his fingers to his temples. "My mother was a woman of substance. She carried flour on her apron and fire in her veins. She fed the whole neighborhood. These women look like they would faint at the sight of a single carbohydrate. How are they supposed to represent La Familia?" "Boss, they're the top tier," Tony said quietly, straightening his silk tie. "The PR team swears this is what sells. Glamour. Aspiration." "I don't sell aspiration," Raphael snapped. His fist slammed onto the glass table, and all 10 models flinched. "I sell loyalty. I sell the memory of the only woman who ever truly gave a damn about me." Outside the heavy oak doors, a very different kind of trouble was unfolding. Lily Harper was flushed and sweating, silently cursing the broken service elevator. Soft-bellied and curvy, she was nothing like the sleek creatures inside the penthouse. She worked for a struggling little catering company hired only to serve coffee and basic refreshments during the auditions. Her uniform pulled too tight across her body. Strands of unruly chestnut hair had escaped her messy bun, and a smudge of powdered sugar clung to her left cheek. She fought to keep her catering cart from squeaking while she arranged the silver coffee urns. Exhaustion weighed on her. Between her father's crushing medical debts and endless double shifts, she barely had time to breathe, let alone eat a proper meal. Unable to afford downtown lunch prices, she had brought her own food in a battered plastic container. She had warmed it in the break room microwave down the hall, hoping to eat quickly in the service corridor before any of the terrifying men in suits noticed her. When she lifted the lid, a rich, intoxicating aroma rose into the air. It was a rustic, slow-simmered Sicilian ragu with an unorthodox twist, a dash of roasted fennel, a splash of cheap red wine, and that very specific pinch of dark cocoa powder and orange zest. Inside the boardroom, Raphael was in the middle of berating the agency director when the words suddenly died in his throat. His chest tightened. A violent spasm of memory struck him so hard he swayed on his feet. He inhaled sharply. It was impossible. His mother, Caterina, had been gunned down in a crossfire when he was still a teenager. She had taken her secret recipe, the exact meal she cooked for him every Sunday, to the grave with her. Raphael had paid fortunes to Michelin-starred chefs from Rome to Naples trying to recreate it. None of them ever got the ratios right. They always missed the cocoa. They always missed the orange zest. "Tony," he whispered, his voice trembling for the first time in years. "What is that smell?" Tony sniffed the air, puzzled. "Coffee, boss. Maybe somebody's perfume." "No!" Raphael's chair crashed backward as he shoved it away. He strode past the stunned supermodels and the panicked agency director, then threw open the heavy oak doors. There, in the dimly lit corridor, sat Lily. She froze, plastic fork halfway to her mouth, wide hazel eyes filled with terror as the towering, dangerous man loomed over her. She scrambled to her feet, nearly knocking over the cart. "I'm sorry," she squeaked, clutching the container to her chest like a shield. "I know I'm not supposed to eat on the executive floor. I was just—" Raphael stepped into her space. He paid no attention to her worn shoes, her stained apron, or the soft curves of her hips. His gaze was locked on the plastic container. "Who made that?" he demanded, voice dropping to a dangerously quiet register. "I did, sir," Lily stammered, heart slamming against her ribs. Everyone in Chicago knew to look down when a Moretti car passed by. Raphael reached out his large, scarred hand and closed it gently around her small, trembling one. He drew the container toward him and breathed in deeply. The scent of his childhood, of safety, of a mother's unconditional love flooded through him and disarmed the ruthless crime lord completely. He turned his head back toward the boardroom. "Tony." "Yes, boss." "Fire them. All of them," Raphael ordered, eyes never leaving Lily's terrified face. "Pay their agency fees and get them out of my building. Now." "But Raphael, the campaign." "I said get them out!" he roared. Then he looked back at Lily, expression unreadable. "You. Bring your food. You're coming with me." Lily's legs felt like wet sand as Raphael Moretti led her out of the corporate penthouse and into his private armored elevator. The silence between them was suffocating. She clutched her cheap plastic container, certain she was about to be thrown into Lake Michigan for the crime of smelling up a mob boss's hallway. When the doors opened, they stepped into Raphael's private residential penthouse kitchen. A gleaming, untouched sanctuary of brushed steel, copper pots, and white marble. It looked more like a museum than a place where anyone actually cooked. "Sit," he commanded, pointing to a leather bar stool. He took the container from her shaking hands, found a silver fork in a velvet-lined drawer, and stood over the kitchen island. Lily watched, barely breathing, as the most feared man in the Midwest took a bite of her leftover lunch. For a long, terrifying moment, Raphael said nothing. He closed his eyes. The harsh lines of his face, carved by years of gang wars, betrayals, and street violence, suddenly softened. A single tear escaped the corner of his eye before he angrily wiped it away. The taste was perfect. The bitter darkness of the cocoa, the bright lift of orange zest, the deep, slow-cooked richness of the meat. It was Caterina's soul in a bowl. "Where did you get this recipe?" he asked, voice thick and rough with emotion. His eyes opened and pinned her with an intense, burning gaze. "I grew up in Little Italy," Lily whispered, twisting the hem of her apron between her fingers. "On Taylor Street, in a rundown apartment complex. When I was a little girl, there was this sweet older lady who lived across the hall. She was hiding from someone. She never went outside. My mom worked 3 jobs, so the lady watched me after school. She taught me how to cook. She said the cocoa was to remind her son that life can be bitter, but the orange zest was to remind him that it can still be sweet." Raphael felt the air leave his lungs. He gripped the edge of the marble counter until his knuckles turned white. During the bloody Castellamarese War that had nearly destroyed his family, he had hidden his mother in a rundown safe house on Taylor Street. He had believed she was completely alone in her final months before the rival hitmen found her. Knowing she had spent those last days cooking, laughing, and passing her legacy to this little girl sent a shockwave through his hardened heart. "Her name?" he asked, barely above a whisper. "What was her name?" "Mrs. Caterina," Lily said softly, finally meeting his eyes. She saw the pain there and understood in an instant. "She was your mother, wasn't she?" Raphael didn't answer directly. He set the fork down and drew a slow, deliberate breath, trying to rebuild the armor around his soul. But as he looked at Lily, her soft, genuine face, the curves that spoke of warmth and reality instead of the cold plastic of his world, something deep inside him shifted forever. "What is your name?" he asked. "Lily. Lily Harper." "Well, Lily Harper," Raphael said, pulling a sleek black checkbook from his suit pocket. "As of this second, you no longer work for whatever sad catering company hired you. You are the new executive chef of La Familia, and you are the new face of my restaurant empire." Lily's eyes widened. "Mr. Moretti, I can't. I'm not a model. I mean, look at me. I'm a size 14 on a good day. I don't know the first thing about running a high-end kitchen, and I definitely can't be on billboards." Raphael walked around the island until he stood only inches away. His presence was overwhelming, carrying the scent of expensive cologne, tobacco, and danger. He reached out and gently brushed the smudge of powdered sugar from her cheek with his thumb. The touch sent a jolt of electricity straight down Lily's spine. "The women I just fired were empty," he said, his gaze dropping briefly to her lips before returning to her eyes. "You carry my mother's legacy in your hands. You have more beauty and substance in this flour-stained apron than those women have in their entire portfolios. I will hire a sous chef to run the line. I will hire a PR team to handle the billboards, but you are the soul of this project. Do you understand me?" He gave her no chance to refuse. In the days that followed, Lily's life became unrecognizable. She moved from a cramped, moldy apartment into a luxury suite inside the Moretti Tower. Her father's crushing medical debts vanished, paid in full by an anonymous philanthropic trust. She spent her days in the pristine test kitchen of La Familia, cooking beside Raphael, who began visiting every day. The ruthless mob bosses would roll up his custom silk sleeves, tie on an apron, and chop onions next to her, laughing for the first time in years. A slow, deep, and terrifyingly real romance began to simmer between the hardened criminal and the soft-hearted civilian. But in Chicago's underworld, weakness is blood in the water. Word spread quickly that the untouchable Raphael Moretti had developed a reckless obsession. Across town, in a cigar-filled speakeasy on the south side, Marco Bellini slammed his glass of bourbon onto the table. Marco was the brutal head of the rival Bellini syndicate and had spent years searching for any crack in Raphael's armor. "You're telling me," he sneered at his lieutenant, "that the Ghost fired 10 international supermodels, torched a multi-million-dollar campaign, and handed the keys to his new fortress to a curvy baker from Taylor Street." "That's the word on the street, boss," the lieutenant replied. "He's got security on her around the clock. He eats with her every night. He's soft for her." Marco's scarred face twisted into a vicious smile. "Raphael Moretti thinks he can play house. He thinks he can keep a civilian pet while controlling my territory's shipping routes." He leaned forward, ice clinking in his glass. "Find out everything about this Lily Harper. Where she walks, who she loves, where her sick father lives. Raphael wants to remember his mother fondly. We're going to make sure this little baker meets her." The storm was gathering. Lily, wrapped in the warm, fragrant safety of Raphael's kitchen, had no idea she had just become the most valuable target in Chicago. The billboards went up, casting long shadows over the magnificent mile. They did not feature the usual skeletal, hungry-eyed supermodels. Instead, Lily Harper smiled down from above the skyline, photographed in warm golden light inside a rustic kitchen, wearing a crisp white chef's coat that embraced her generous curves. Her chestnut hair caught the light. Her smile was radiant, real, and deeply inviting. Beneath the image, elegant text read simply, La Familia, real food, real heritage. The city's elite erupted. Fashion agencies called it a disaster. But the public reaction was immediate and explosive. The reservation line for La Familia collapsed within hours. People were captivated by the mystery of the beautiful, ordinary-looking woman who had somehow melted the heart of the notoriously icy Raphael Moretti. Inside the restaurant's fortified kitchen, shielded from the chaos, Lily thrived. Late one evening, long after the prep staff had gone, she stood alone experimenting with a new reduction sauce. The rich scent of balsamic and roasted garlic filled the air. She wore comfortable clogs and her favorite apron, humming softly to herself. She didn't hear Raphael enter until she felt the heat of his powerful frame behind her. "You're working too late," he murmured, his deep voice vibrating against her spine. His charcoal suit jacket was open, tie discarded, the top buttons of his shirt undone to reveal the faint edges of dark tattoos across his chest. "The grand opening is approaching, Raphael," Lily said, turning. She bumped gently into his chest, and her breath caught as she looked up into his dark, intense eyes. "I need the veal to be perfect. It has to honor her." Raphael's gaze softened in the way it only did for her. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small, worn velvet box. "My mother didn't care about perfection, Lily. She cared about passion." He opened the box. Inside, on faded silk, lay a delicate vintage gold chain holding a small ruby-encrusted cross. "She was wearing this the day she died. I swore I would only give it to the woman who brought life back into my family's name." Lily's eyes filled with tears. "Raphael, I can't. This is too precious." "You are precious," he corrected fiercely. His large hands fastened the cool gold around her neck. His fingers lingered on her collarbone, thumb tracing the racing pulse at her throat. The tension that had been building for weeks finally broke. Raphael leaned down and captured her lips in a kiss that was desperate, hungry, and all-consuming. Lily melted against him, fingers gripping the lapels of his suit, as if he were the only solid thing left in the world. But outside their sanctuary, the trap had already been set. The next afternoon, while Lily was finalizing the seating chart in the restaurant office, her phone vibrated. The caller ID showed the physical therapy clinic where her father Thomas was recovering, the same luxury facility Raphael had quietly arranged. "Hello?" she answered, still smiling from Raphael's morning kiss. "Miss Harper," a panicked voice said. "This is Nurse Davis at Oakwood Recovery. I'm so sorry, but your father has collapsed. He's unresponsive. The paramedics are rushing him to Mercy Hospital right now. You need to get here immediately." Lily's blood turned to ice. "What? No! That can't be right. I saw him yesterday. He was fine. Please, Miss Harper. They're doing CPR. You have to hurry." The line went dead. Blind panic took over. She knew she should alert Polly, the armed bodyguard stationed outside her door, but Polly's orders were strict. Full motorcade. Secured routes. That would take too long. Her father was dying. On pure adrenaline, Lily grabbed her coat and slipped out through the kitchen's freight elevator, the same route staff used for garbage. She burst into the damp alley behind the restaurant and sprinted toward the street. She never reached the sidewalk. Two massive figures stepped from the shadows of a dumpster. Before she could scream, a rough hand clamped over her mouth. The sickening chemical smell of chloroform flooded her senses. She kicked and thrashed, her heavy kitchen clogs striking her attackers, but they were too strong. As her vision darkened, the last thing she felt was the cold gold of Katerina's cross against her collarbone. Not long after, Raphael walked into the restaurant office carrying 2 espressos. The room was empty. Seating charts lay scattered across the floor. A cold dread coiled in his gut. "Polly, boss?" Polly jogged over, confused. "She's still inside, right?" Raphael didn't answer. He sprinted to the kitchen, spotted the open freight elevator, and rode it down to the alley. Lily's cell phone lay in a puddle of stagnant water. Tony Russo appeared moments later, gun already drawn. One look at Raphael's face, and a chill ran down his spine. The man who had been laughing in the kitchen earlier was gone. Only the ghost of Chicago remained. "Tony," Raphael whispered, voice like cracking ice. "Mobilize the men, empty the armories, lock down every bridge and tunnel in this city. If Marco Bellini has harmed one hair on her head, I will paint the streets with his blood." The cold was absolute when Lily woke. She was tied to a heavy steel chair inside an abandoned meatpacking plant. The air stank of rust, old copper, and freezing ammonia. Fluorescent lights burned her eyes. 10 feet away, smoking a thick Cuban cigar, stood Marco Bellini, surrounded by armed men. "Look who's awake," he sneered, walking over. He grabbed her chin roughly. "I gotta admit, I don't see the appeal. You're soft? A civilian. But my guys say Moretti looks at you like you're the Madonna herself." Lily didn't cry. Terror pounded in her chest, but she remembered the Taylor Street apartments and the debt collectors who used to pound on her father's door. She knew how to meet a monster's eyes. "He's going to kill you," she said, voice shaking but steady. Marco laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. "No, sweetheart, he's going to sign over the South Side ports, the unions, and the trucking routes. Because if he doesn't, I'm putting a bullet in your pretty little head and sending him the video." He pulled out a burner phone and dialed Raphael's private number. It answered instantly. "Marco." Raphael's voice was terrifyingly calm. "Listen to me, Moretti," Marco gloated. "I have your little baker. If you ever want to taste her cooking again, you're handing over the waterfront. No lawyers, just you, the deeds, and my men at the docks." "Marco," Raphael repeated softly. "Did you look outside before you called?" Marco gestured to one of his men. "Tommy, check the windows." Tommy wiped the grimy glass, peered out, and staggered back. "Boss, there are black SUVs everywhere. They've surrounded the block." Before Marco could react, the warehouse plunged into total darkness. The power had been cut. Lily screamed as the heavy steel doors exploded inward with a deafening blast. Tactical flashlights cut through the black, mounted on automatic rifles. Gunfire erupted, deafening and blinding. Lily threw herself sideways, toppling the chair to make herself a smaller target. She heard shouting, bodies hitting concrete. Above it all came Raphael's roar. "Hold your fire! She's on the floor!" Emergency generators flickered on, bathing everything in dim red light. Marco Bellini, bleeding from a shoulder graze, saw he was finished. His men were dead or disarmed. In a final, cowardly move, he lunged at Lily with a serrated knife, trying to use her as a shield. But Lily was no fragile model. She hauled 50-pound sacks of flour every day. As Marco lunged, she rolled hard and swung her bound legs with every ounce of strength. Her steel-toed kitchen clog smashed directly into his kneecap. Marco howled. His leg buckled. For one crucial second, his momentum stalled. That was all Raphael needed. A single gunshot cracked through the warehouse. Marco Bellini dropped, a perfect bullet hole between his eyes. Raphael stood 20 feet away, pistol still raised, smoke curling from the barrel. His suit was ruined, face spattered with blood, chest heaving. He dropped the gun and crossed the room in 3 strides, falling to his knees beside Lily. A switchblade flashed as he cut her zip ties free. He pulled her into his chest, burying his face in her hair, his powerful frame shaking. "Are you hurt? Did he touch you?" His hands moved frantically over her face, arms, and neck until his fingers brushed the gold cross. "I'm okay," Lily sobbed, clinging to his blood-stained shirt as if the world would end if she let go. "I'm okay, Raphael. I'm sorry." Raphael pressed his lips to her forehead. "I brought you into this darkness. I should have kept you far away from me." Lily pulled back and looked straight into the eyes of the ruthless killer who held her like she was made of glass. "You didn't bring me into the darkness, Raphael," she said fiercely. "You brought me home." When La Familia finally opened its doors, it was the social event of the decade. Chicago's elite, politicians, and celebrities filled the dining room, desperate to taste the legendary menu. Lily stepped out of the kitchen wearing a breathtaking emerald silk gown that flowed over her curves like liquid light. Caterina's ruby cross gleamed at her throat. Raphael waited at the bottom of the grand staircase in a perfectly tailored tuxedo, devastatingly handsome. As she descended, the entire room fell silent. He offered his hand, ignoring the flashing cameras. He no longer cared who saw them or what the underworld whispered. The man who had lived his entire life in shadow was stepping into the light, completely captivated by the woman who had saved his soul with nothing more than a pinch of cocoa and orange zest. He pulled her close and kissed her softly in front of the entire world, declaring without words that the King of Chicago had finally found his queen. Did you expect that explosive twist in the warehouse? Lily proved she is so much more than a talented chef. She carries the heart and courage of a true Mafia queen. If you loved this intense blend of culinary passion, high-stakes danger, and a romance that beats all the odds, please hit that like button. Share this story with your friends and subscribe to the channel for more thrilling, heart-pounding romance tales.